In today's video, I'm going to talk about some common pronunciation problems that Japanese speakers have in English. Many of the problems that I'm going to talk about won't affect intelligibility, so please don't worry about trying to change every single aspect of your pronunciation that I mention in this video. As a disclaimer, this video is not intended to change anyone's accent or make you sound like a native or anything crazy like that. It's simply just an educational tool to help Japanese students and also help teachers who maybe teach Japanese students about aspects of pronunciation that might be difficult for them. This video will be divided in 3 different parts. I'll firstly talk about the vowels, then the consonants, and then just some overall observations and some general advice and tips for Japanese speakers. So I hope you enjoy. As this video is also designed for learners, you can practice at home using some of the examples and exercises that I'm going to give with each of the problems addressed in this video. Before we get started though, I'd just like to quickly mention that if you are interested in improving your pronunciation and you're serious about getting feedback, trying to speak more clearly, confidently, and also understand other speakers when they're speaking English, then please take a look at my course, the Pronunciation Pro membership site. I give daily feedback on there. You get access to over 100 pronunciation lessons. Maybe I should join it. And you get access as well to a monthly webinar where you can ask me any questions that you have about pronunciation or English in general. So the course starts from the basics, such as how to pronounce every single sound that's in British English, more importantly, modern received pronunciation, and it takes you up to features such as stress, intonation, ellipsis, and many other things that will help you sound more fluent and make English as well just come out easier. It makes it easier to pronounce and speak, because I know we're going to talk about many of the problems that Japanese speakers have in this video, and my course will definitely help you with that. You'll also get feedback every single day, as I mentioned, so if you're looking for feedback from a pronunciation teacher, someone who's experienced and qualified and knows what they're talking about, then take a look at the Pronunciation Pro membership site. I will link it down below in the description for you. So to start with the vowels, Japanese has 5 vowels. Not many to play with here, I know, and this can cause a bit of a pain with English, but you do have a slight advantage compared to some other languages. You don't have long and short vowels in Japanese, however, you do have something kind of like a double vowel. So instead of saying oo, you may say oo, and you just elongate it, making it a lot easier for Japanese speakers to be able to distinguish between short and long vowels. So let's talk about O and O. What a lot of Japanese speakers do is they confuse these two and they might replace it with a different vowel sound, something like an O sound. So we've got court, coat, court, coat. So be careful with that second one. It is a diphthong. So we've got 2 vowel sounds together. Court, coat, coat. I'm really trying to exaggerate this one, but court, coat. Law, low, law, low. More, mo, more, mo. Now the sounds a and are quite often pronounced just as an a sound, so many Japanese speakers don't distinguish between match and much, and they just pronounce them as match and match. So make sure with that first one, with a, your mouth is nice and wide, just like a Japanese a, no different. But the other sound, the sound, you drop your jaw. So we have a, ma, match, much. Another example is cap, cup, cap, cup. Now what's very interesting with Japanese speakers is that with the and the schwa sounds, they're quite often replaced by an r. So a word such as bird becomes something like barn. So you might hear Japanese speakers saying burn, turn, and girl as barn, turn, girl. So just make sure that you relax your mouth completely. It's a long sound as well. Girl, girl, turn. So not tar, don't drop your jaw. Tar, keep it super relaxed. Turn, turn, and burn, burn. With the schwa, it's very similar. We just make it shorter, so it's Keep it completely relaxed. So what tends to happen with Japanese speakers when we put the schwa at the end of words, Japanese speakers will elongate it and say something like computer instead of computer. So just make sure that you're keeping your mouth relaxed. Don't drop your jaw, not computer, with your jaw dropping. Keep it short and relaxed. Computer, computer. Another example is teacher. I hear teacher quite a lot. But teacher, teacher. Keep it short at the end. Now, of course, the ends of the words can change in English due to the different accents and varieties of English. What I'm focusing on here is received pronunciation and modern received pronunciation. So do bear in mind that different accents pronounce the endings differently. But here, I'm just teaching the version with the schwa at the end. So make sure it's short. Teacher, not teacher. This also happens for words which contain a diphthong with a schwa at the end. So a word like beer and air, instead of pronouncing them with the schwa, the very short schwa sound, it's a bit of a tongue twister. Instead, many Japanese speakers will say like beer, air, and make it longer at the end. I mean, I'm exaggerating it there, but you see what I mean. So just make sure you keep it short. The schwa is very short. Beer, air. Now let's take a look at the consonant sounds. The most common problem that I hear Japanese speakers have is the difference between L and R. Now I have a full video all about this on my channel that you can go and take a look at after watching this video, of course. I will link it down in the description for you. But it does make distinguishing words like lice and rice quite tricky if you don't get those sounds right. So make sure you practice. We have L, lice, and R, rice. Lice, rice. Alive, arrive. Now the next problem I want to talk about is the sound and you might be thinking, but Emma, Japanese has a sound that's no different. And that's very true. But what sometimes can happen with Japanese speakers is when they get the combination of and oo, like who, for example, they can sometimes change that into a sound. So it's almost like a. So sometimes some speakers will say, who is it? Instead of who is it? So just watch that you're not pronouncing it like a sound, but who. Who is it? Now when it comes to the TH sounds, the voiceless sometimes gets changed to a s or sh, depending on the vowel that comes after it. However, with the v sound, the voiced one, what tends to happen is Japanese speakers replace this with a z sound. So we have thin, thin, shin, shin. So be careful, they mean two completely different things in English. Thought, thought, sort, sort. Now with the voiced one, clothing, clothing, closing, closing, then, zen. So make sure that you put your tongue in between your teeth for these two TH sounds. Have a full video about it. I'll put it in the description and you can check it out after watching this one. Now the sound v doesn't exist in Japanese. So what can happen is many learners will replace it with a b sound. V, b. So make sure you're doing that v sound using your top teeth, just touching on the inside of your bottom lip. So v, b. For example, very, berry, very, berry, van, ban, van, ban. Now many Japanese speakers might change the pronunciation of the n sound in words. They might change it to an and they might change it to an instead of using the n where it's needed. So let's have a practice with these three sounds. We have three nasals in English, and so and For example, sim, sin, sing. Another example is whim, win, wing. So pay close attention to that ending there. Whim, win, wing. Try not to change it. If you change that ending, then you might end up changing the word and you might end up confusing some people, so be careful with that one. The next problem is about the t and d sounds when they have an oo after them. What happens with t and oo is instead of saying tu, many Japanese speakers will say tsu, tsu. The same goes for d and oo. It becomes more like a j sound for some Japanese speakers. So the word doing sounds like dewing. So be careful there. You got tu, not tsu, tu, and do, do. And in the word we used, doing, doing. Now the next bunch of problems that I'm going to talk about are quite similar to the last ones, but this time is when we have t and d plus an e sound after it. So for many Japanese speakers, t and e, instead of becoming t, it sounds like chi. For d and e, instead of saying deed, for example, many Japanese speakers might say jeed. For s and e, instead of saying si, many Japanese speakers might say she. And the last one here, so for z and e, again, many Japanese speakers might say instead of zip, they might say something like jip. So just watch that you're not changing the sounds because you might end up changing the word completely if you do this in English. So the words we had were tea, not chi, deed, not jeed, see, not she, and the last one, zip, not jip. So be very careful there. Now let's talk about some overall problems that Japanese speakers have with English pronunciation, as well as some tips and advice for you as well. Now, as a Japanese speaker, you'll be familiar with katakana. Katakana is the alphabet that you use in Japanese to basically represent the pronunciation of foreign words. This is great to some degree, however, it can be a bit of a problem with pronunciation, as the katakana pronunciation can sometimes affect the English pronunciation that you're trying to do. And a lot of the time we don't pronounce things in English as you would in the katakana way. Here's a good example. Take the word technique. 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 Now this word does exist in Japanese as well. Many speakers may use it, but they won't say technique. They will say it in the katakana way when speaking Japanese. So it will sound more like technique, technique, which is completely different to technique. So watch out for that. Watch out for stress as well with katakana words. So like camera becomes camera or camera in English. So not camera where it's like the same, but camera or camera in English. So do watch the word stress. Also, a lot of vowels change. So if we take the word cake in katakana, it would be keiki, keiki. Now I've heard a lot of Japanese speakers saying cake with like a long flat eh sound, and that's great if you want to have a little Yorkshire accent. It's where I'm from, very proud to have that. But of course, if you want to speak with a modern RP accent or RP accent, then that's not the sound to be pronouncing. So don't say keiki, but something like cake. So make sure you're using the diphthong. This again is just an influence of katakana, so try not to let katakana influence your English too much. Now, something that's a big difference between Japanese and English is that Japanese is a mora timed language. Many Japanese speakers might be familiar with what mora timing is, but if not, let me just very quickly explain it for you. So Japanese doesn't work the same way as syllable timed and stress timed languages. It is not measured in syllables, it is measured in something called mora. So if I take the word konnichiwa, konnichiwa. So notice here we've got konnichiwa. Here we've got 5 mora. But if we split it into syllables like we do in English, it would be like konnichiwa, konnichiwa. It would have 4 syllables. So each of the mora here is basically, I like to describe it as like a unit of speech. It's like a unit of speech in the word. Usually it just consists of a vowel sound or a consonant and vowel sound together. So for example, like a or ka would be considered as 1 mora. Now, what effect does this have on your English? Well, what can sometimes happen is that many Japanese speakers, when speaking English, will kind of break the words up in English into almost like this mora-like way. So instead of saying something like computer, you will kind of break it up like computer, something like that. Like you will break it up into these like individual little bits instead of pronouncing it as like one word. So instead of saying computer, many speakers might say computer, something like this, and almost like in this sort of machine gun sort of fashion. So be very careful, make sure you focus on linking, make sure you focus on stress in English, and also understand that there are weak and strong forms. In Japanese, you don't have strong and weak forms of words, you just have the strong form. In English, with it being a different timed language completely, we do have strong and weak forms. So if you're interested in learning more about that, it can greatly help you with your listening comprehension. I have a video all about sentence stress that you can go and check out. The link is in the description. Check that out after watching this video. Now, with Japanese having a pitch accent, this means that Japanese speakers' ears are perfectly tuned to picking up different types of intonation and pitch in English. This doesn't mean, though, that they don't have any problems. Certain problems do arise, especially with question intonation, which is what I want to talk about here. So in Japanese, if you want to ask a question, quite often your intonation will rise at the end of the sentence. Or if it doesn't rise, you at least show that it's a question by using the particles ka or ne at the end. While in English, however, we don't do that. Sometimes our intonation can fall at the end of a question. So we can say, how are you? And how are you? And this can sometimes cause a few problems with Japanese learners, as they sometimes think people are just giving them a statement and they don't realise that they're actually being asked a question. So if you want to learn more about question intonation, I have a full video on that as well. Again, I'll link it in the description and you can check it out after watching this video. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is consonant clusters. Consonant clusters don't really exist in Japanese, not to the crazy extent of English. So it means that words like table can be quite difficult to pronounce, and many Japanese speakers will split it up and say something like teiburu to make it a little bit easier to pronounce. Again, it goes back to that idea of the mora timing, how you typically have like consonant vowel, you know, it kind of works like that. Of course, you can have a cluster of vowels together in Japanese, but you don't really have a cluster of consonants in Japanese, so it makes it quite hard. So make sure you practice words like table, asked, and so on. Just really practice those consonant clusters and try not to add vowel sounds in between. I know it makes it easier for you to do, Japanese speakers, but it can definitely affect the meaning of the word and the intelligibility of the word, so try not to do it if possible. What Japanese speakers sometimes do as well is they add a vowel sound to the end of words that finish with a consonant sound. So let's take, for example, catch. Many Japanese speakers will say catchy instead of catch because it's more comfortable. You don't have words in Japanese that end in consonant sounds like they do in English, with the exceptions of ones like in Japanese. So to make it more comfortable, you add a vowel sound at the end of it. But the problem is that if you do that to English words, you can change the meaning of them, and you can also make it a bit difficult for other people to understand the word that you're saying. If you say to someone catchy, they might not know what you're trying to say. So just be careful there. Make sure you're pronouncing that consonant sound at the end and you're not adding a vowel sound after it. So catch, catch. And that's it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've learned something new. Let me know down in the comments which of these problems were ones that you had before watching the video. And if you know of any other problems that Japanese speakers have with pronunciation, let me know down in the comments as well, as I haven't been able to include them all in this video. But I've tried to include like the most common problems that students have to try and help. So it would be really good if we could also get a list of other common problems that Japanese speakers have down in the comments too. If you've learned something new from this lesson, then please hit the like button. It really, really helps out my channel quite a lot. And if you're serious about improving your pronunciation, then take a look at the Pronunciation Pro membership site. It is an online pronunciation course designed by me, run by me, and it takes you from the very, very basics of pronunciation up to the most advanced features to help you sound more fluent and confident and start to understand natural speech more in English. I will leave that linked down below in the description for you so you can go and check that out. Have a wonderful day and I will see you next lesson. Bye bye!